Hello, everybody. Welcome to this installment of Bio 153. In this set of videos, we're going to start talking about the respiratory system, and we're going to start with respiratory system structure. Okay, so before I talk about respiratory system structure, let's talk about some of the functions of the respiratory system. Okay, so you probably are aware that the respiratory system is responsible for gas exchange. That's one of the main functions of the respiratory system. So as our cells metabolize, they need oxygen and they produce CO2. And we need to exchange that oxygen and CO2 with the outside environment. The respiratory system, particularly the lungs, are the site at which that gas exchange happens. Probably not a surprise to you. Okay, next up, this may be a surprise to you. Respiratory system plays a really big role in regulation of pH in our bodies. So the respiratory system is responsible for about 75% of our body's pH regulation. We'll talk about this a lot more in a few weeks when we talk about pH regulation, okay? The respiratory system also protects us from inhaled substances. So in the air, there's all kinds of pathogens, dust, things like that. We're only interested really in the oxygen part of that, okay? So what we wanna do is we wanna try to filter that stuff out as we breathe it in, as we breathe the air in. And finally, vocalization. Okay, so we use our voice boxes to talk and sing and yell and things like that. Okay, so in this unit on the respiratory system, we're going to first talk about the process of getting air into and out of our lungs. That's called ventilation. And then in the latter half of the respiratory system unit, we're going to be talking about gas exchange, how gas exchange happens at the lungs and at the tissues in our bodies. All right, so now we're ready to talk about the structure of the respiratory system. The respiratory system consists of airways, which are a series of tubes that connect the lungs to the external environment. We've got alveoli, which are these little sacs that are in our lungs, and those are the site of gas exchange in our lungs. And then finally, we have the bones and muscles of the thorax, which play a big role in helping us move air into and out of the lungs. All right, so let's take a look at each of these one at a time, starting with the airways. Okay, so the respiratory system is split into an upper respiratory system and a lower respiratory system. The upper respiratory system is, it includes the pharynx, which is right here. Okay, so it's this sort of area that's shared by both the digestive system and the respiratory system. And we also have the larynx, or the voice, wait, where is it? Okay, here, the voice box. That's where our vocal cords are, okay? Okay, looking at the lower respiratory system, we've got trachea, we have bronchi, and then bronchioles, and then those bronchioles terminate in the alveoli where the gas exchange happens. So as we breathe in air, it passes through these structures in this order. Okay, so let's take a closer look at these structures that make up the lower respiratory system. We are going to start with the trachea, but before I do that, I want to orient you to this table, okay? So this table shows you the airways from the kind of the top part of your body moving down towards the lungs, okay? You can see that this table shows you the diameters of the different airways, how many we have, cross-sectional area, okay? So trachea, bronchi, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. Okay, so let's talk about the trachea. So the trachea, oh, and the primary bronchi. So the trachea branches into two primary bronchi, okay? From there, those bronchi branch again 10 additional times, okay? So each branch has a smaller diameter than the previous branch, okay? Um, let's see, the trachea and bronchi are cartilaginous. Let's give you a moment to think about why that might be a useful feature for our airways to have, so think about that. Okay, so the cartilaginous lining on the bronchi and the trachea help to keep the airways propped open, right? So that's what you want to do, right? You need to be able to get air from the outside all the way down to your alveoli. You don't want these airways to collapse. Otherwise, you won't be able to move that air towards your alveoli and back out. So it's basically just a way to keep those airways open, okay? Oh, right. I'm sorry, I forgot to do this. The bronchi, we have 11 branches of our bronchi, branchings. Okay, so as air moves through our trachea and bronchi, it gets conditioned. These are the ways in which the air gets conditioned. The air gets warmed, it gets humidified, and it gets filtered. So the lining of our airways, of the trachea and bronchi, help to achieve these conditioning goals. Okay, so let's take a look at that structure. Okay, just to orient you, this is the outer wall of your airway. Okay, and then this is the inside where the air would be moving. Okay, and what you can see is we have a layer of cells here of various sorts. I guess I'll describe them now. So we have these ciliated cells right here, okay? They're epithelial cells. And then we have these goblet cells, which are responsible for secreting mucus, okay? So that mucus comes out and it ends up right here. This is a mucus layer. And then we have a saline layer right here, okay? So let's talk about the conditioning of air as it moves into our respiratory system or in through our respiratory system. So our air gets warmed just by picking up the heat from our body. Okay, so that's like pretty straightforward, but it is important because cold air can damage the cells of the alveoli. Okay, the airways get sorry, not the airways, the air gets humidified as it moves through our airways, and that humidification comes from this saline layer. So the water just becomes airborne and gets added to the air that enters our lungs. By the time our air makes it to our alveoli, the air is 100% humidified, okay? And that's important because you need a moist surface for gas exchange to happen, okay? And then the filtering, okay? So let's talk about the filtering. It's a little bit more involved in terms of explaining how that happens. So remember I told you we have these ciliated epithelial cells, we have these goblet cells making mucus, and we have this saline layer. As we breathe in, dust particles, pathogens, etc., just other, whatever we don't want in our air, that gets trapped in this mucus layer, okay? And then what happens is these cilia of these epithelial cells, they beat in such a way as to move this mucus upwards, okay? So as the mucus moves upwards, it reaches our mouth, our pharynx, where it can then be like spit out if you want to have a contest with your friend to see how far you can spit it out, or you can swallow it, which actually that's what your body is designed to do. You swallow it and then your stomach acids and enzymes destroy whatever was in that mucus, okay?